Hey guys, welcome to another video. In this video, I will be calculating efficiency ratios for Marks and Spencer and will be carrying out a bit of analysis on the results. So let's look at the first one, which is assets turnover ratio.
Turnover divided by total assets. To explain this ratio, let's take a little example. Let's say a taxi driver buys a taxi for £50,000 and he drives that taxi for 8 hours a day. In those 8 hours, he makes £500 in fare. So he is using his asset for 8 hours a day and making £500 a day. There is another driver, however, he bought the taxi with 50,000 as well, and he drives the taxi during the day for 8 hours, and he also makes £500 from that taxi. But when he comes home, rather than leaving his taxi in his garage, he rent that taxi out for another 8 hours for £250. So he is making a £750 from the taxi every day in comparison to another taxi driver who's only making £500. So this is the best use of the assets, and managers are assessed on how well they are performing in this area. This is asset utilization. So let's look at Marks and Spencer's ratios now and see how Marks and Spencer is utilizing their assets. So going back to my Excel, first of all, efficiency ratio. And in efficiency ratio, the first one is assets turnover, and we know that it is total assets divided by turnover. So going to my balance sheet, which is have my total assets turnover. Okay, so it should be turnover first. Turnover, which is an income statement, 10,698.2. We have already used this figure. Let's see. Turnover divided by total assets. The total assets are in balance sheet. Total assets 7550.2. Hold on. Okay, so this ratio means that when we invest £100 in an asset, our sales are £142. Okay, ideally it should be 4 times. Ideally, when you invest £100 in an asset, that asset should be generating sales of £400 per annum. Okay, that's, you have a whole year to use that asset. So this is very less theoretically. However, again, we need to see what happened in the previous year and how the competitors are doing in this case. The retailers normally have a smaller ratio. So again, comparison is very, very important in this case. So my turnover is already used, 10622 divided by my total assets, 8292.5. So it's 1.28. So it was actually less last year. How to improve this ratio would depend on the circumstances, how could be done. An easy fix normally is that those companies who own a building, for example, they sell that building and then they rent out that building, because in that case the value of their assets would go down, their expenses would go up, but their asset turnover ratio would actually go higher because now they have a lot less assets. So it's thinking about where is your money stuck for the long time and how to best use that money. Next ratio is on inventory days. The formula is average inventory divided by cost of sales times 365 days. This ratio measures that how quickly we can sell our stock, and it is a very important ratio. I give you an example to explain this. Let's say I start a business with £10,000. So I start on 1st of January, and by 31st of January, I have sold all of those products. Then I buy again, I sell again, I buy again. So every month I buy and sell. Every time I sell, I bought for £10,000. Every time I sell, my profit is £2,000. If I sell it 12 times a year, my profit would be £24,000. So that means you're selling every 30 days. So there's another business who sells after 2 months. So that means their turnover is 60 days and they will be making only a profit of £12,000 with the same investment, but one business is selling their inventory a lot faster than the other one. They're making a lot more profit. So that is the importance of this ratio. If you look at inventory, we have already looked at this figure. Inventory is 781. We used it in quick ratio divided by cost of sales. Now this is the figure which we have not seen before, but we have seen a figure very close to it before, and that was in note 3, gross profit. So sales less cost of sales equals gross profit. So that's the time when we actually went there. So going to my note 3, my cost of sale is 6650.9 and times 365 days. So we get our result. You could use a bracket. "42 days, 43 days, 43 days, yeah. So they sell their inventory 43 days. Last year, what did they do? $758 times 365 divided by cost of sales. 6534, 6534 times 2, 43. 42, 43, very similar results. Is it good? I think it's all right. The reason is that a lot of Marks and Spencer sales are clothing sales, and clothing has a lot longer conversion time. It has a lot longer supply chain in comparison to food. So Tesco's inventory days are around 28, 29 days because they're purely a lot of their sales are actually food items, and that is a very standard inventory days for food items. But Marks and Spencer, as they sell a lot of clothing take a lot of time. When the cotton crop is harvested, they have to buy it then they keep it, they store it. In summer, when the wool is harvested, they have to get it then they store it, they process it, they convert it into cloth, then it is made somewhere in Thailand or Vietnam or China, wherever it is made. Then it is shipped to UK, and then it's displayed on the shop, and then it is sold. So keeping in view all that process, 42 days is a good turnover period for inventory. However, companies in other sectors, it could be a lot longer. For example, Barrett's, they're a house builder. Their inventory days goes up to 800 days. There's another company which is Diageo. They sell wines and whiskey, which needs to be matured for a very long time. So their inventory days goes up to 800 days and so on. So depending on which sector your business is, it could take a lot longer to sell this inventory. Inventory day is a ratio which is very tricky to handle. If you have too much stock, you're paying too much on storage, insurance, you too much money is stuck there. But if you don't have enough, then you lose customers. Buying just in time when you need it, you do not buy a lot of inventory uh, so that you can only buy it when you can sell it. But the problem would that be that sometimes you have a customer, but then you don't have stock, so you lose on the business for not having enough inventory. So again, so it's a tricky area, and again, for some managers, their responsibility is to improve this area. In the coursework, guys, you should you should suggest some recommendations on how to improve each ratio. It may not be possible for all of the ratios, but if you want to get more marks, then you should do that. Moving on to our next ratio, inventory turnover. A very similar ratio. It gives us almost the same result, slightly different way. This simply measures how many times we sell our inventory. That days, yeah, but this gives us times, how many times, cost of sales divided by inventory. So it's simply the other way around. That's 8.5 times they sell their inventory. Okay, so we get 6534.2 divided by 758. More or less the same times. They sell their inventory around 8.5 times a year. More could be sold by reducing the prices, by spending more money on the marketing, but obviously then we need to see what would be the impact. And management accounting, we have some processes where we can actually work out which option is better. Trade receivable collection period. Receivables are our customers who buy from us on credit, and they need to pay us in time. So this ratio calculates how long it takes us to recover money from our customers. It's important because this is our money. If it's not in our hand, we can't really use it. So it's important. Now, with this ratio, one thing is that not all the companies would have this ratio, because not all companies actually sell on credit. Especially retailers, Marks and Spencer, Sainsbury's, Lidl, Aldi, etc. They do not sell on credit. So for the retailers, this ratio does not make sense. However, for manufacturers, those companies who do sell on credit, for them this ratio is very important, because this is their money which is in other people's hands, and they need to collect it on time. There are managers, especially there's actually a department in most of the medium to large organizations called credit control department. The people are responsible to manage this ratio. So let's calculate, although it's not relevant for Marks and Spencer because it's a retailer. I will calculate the ratio anyway to show you how to do it, and then it will be your job to actually do it for your own company. It is also called debtors day, yeah? Trade receivables collection period. So there are two things here: trade receivables that could be found in our balance sheet as our current asset, and credit sales are, we have to assume that all of our sales are credit in this case. If a company, for example, you go for which company? If you go for Coca-Cola or Bar or Diageo, They're all manufacturers. All of their sales could be assumed as credit sales. But if you're doing a retailer, you don't need to calculate this ratio. You can just ignore this ratio. So trade receivables, I'm going to go to my uh, balance sheet. Current assets, trade and other receivables, 308.4. Divided by all of my sales, because 600.2. 10.5 days. So it takes Marks and Spencer to collect 11 days to collect their money, which is quite reasonable for a retailer. It's kind of looks likely that okay, they do some sales on credit because of their cards and stuff like that. Next one is trade payable payment periods. Trade payables are our suppliers, and we take goods from them on credit, and we need to pay them on time. If we don't pay them on time, they may stop selling us. And then if they don't sell us, we won't be able to sell our goods. So it's very important to pay them on time. However, it is also clever not to pay them early. So, but without offending them, because if you don't pay them too early, then you can use their money for your own business. And many of these retailers like Tesco, etc., they use their suppliers' money to run their own business. So it's a very clever way of doing it. But if you don't want to offend your suppliers, because if suppliers stops supplying you, you would be in trouble. In this area, a lot depend on the customer supplier power. Who has more power? So, for example, Tesco has a lot more power over their suppliers. So they have been abusing this power, and they have been paying them really, really late in the past. Recently, in the last 2 years, after these things came in the news, they have started paying them on time. And on time means 3 months. Trade payables are my supplier, divided by credit purchases. So credit purchases and cost of sales are the same thing, okay guys? So you can use cost of sales instead of credit purchases. Second period, my suppliers, going to my balance sheet, trade and other payables, we have already looked at it, 1405.9. So 1405.9 divided by cost of sales. We have already used cost of sales somewhere here. That is 6650.9. And there is a 365 days as well. Let's solve this equation. Days, 78 days it takes them to pay their suppliers. That is considerably okay. They're actually paying them less than 3 months. 3 months is 90 days, so they're taking like 2.5 months, which is quite a reasonable time period. So their performance is good. What could happen if they don't pay? They can extend it to 90 days if they have liquidity problems, but they don't really have any liquidity problems. So should they be doing it? It's an ethical question. It's about abusing other people's money, which you shouldn't. But 77 days is quite good. Again, guys, you can do 2017 as your homework. Next one is operating cash cycle. This is a very important ratio. It's not actually a ratio. It's an equation. And equation is that OCC, operating cash cycle, equals stock days plus debtor days minus creditor days. These are the three ratios which we have already calculated. So we can simply calculate it by the data we already have. Operating cash cycle is stock days plus receivable days minus payable days. So first of all, our inventory days are 43 plus my receivable days are 11 minus my payable days are 77. And 43 plus 11 minus 77, that is minus 23 days. First of all, let's understand what is operating cash cycle is. I start business, I need cash. I need cash to buy my inventories. So I start spending money, and then what happens? I sell those goods to my customers, and then the customers take some time to pay me, and then the money comes back to me. This is called a cycle. If our cycle is smaller, we can get our money back, we can invest it again, we can make more profit, then invest again, make more profit. Just like our inventory days. If we can sell inventory quickly, we can reinvest that money again. Secondly, the smaller is our cycle, the smaller amount we need to run our business. Retailers in the UK, they are very clever. They never have to invest any money to run their business. Obviously, not at the start, but once they're running, they don't have to invest any money. They buy things on credit from the suppliers. They sell those things to customer, and then they keep some money with them, that their money for them for many days, and then they pay those suppliers. The minus 23 days for Marks and Spencer means that they never have to invest their own money to run their business. Their operating cash cycle is negative, which is fine. Okay, one thing to note down, operating cash cycle could be positive and negative. Both are equally fine. Every year I receive many emails that, oh, my operating cash cycle is negative. Is that okay? Yes, that's okay. Okay, that is as good as positive. Negative is actually better. This is a very clever management if you have a negative cash cycle. But again, this is normally true for retailers. Manufacturers, they have long operating cash cycle. For example, Airbus or Diageo, they have a long operating cash cycle. And then the question comes how to manage that operating cash cycle. So I think one of your main point in your discussion should be on operating cash cycle, because this kind of combines three ratios in this area, guys. In your climate, you have to produce a table like this with the calculations, with the results, with the years. 2 years minimum if you want to pass. If you do 1 year, you will fail. 3 years if you want to get good marks. I don't think you should do more than 3 years. What you should do now is take this learning and calculate the ratios for your own company.